Okay, welcome everyone to the FCI Live Winter 2021 series. This is our last day of the 3-week series and our second to last session. There is another session tonight on board self-assessment, looking at board functioning as a working board of a startup food co-op and an easy tool you can use to share your self-assessment with each other and think through where you might need to improve. That is tonight at 7 o'clock Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. But today we are here for a check-in with the Detroit People's Food Co-op, a really innovative, amazing project happening in Detroit. This food co-op is not just kind of a food co-op. It is part of a larger plan. It is part of a larger development, all aimed at Black food sovereignty in the Detroit region. We have with us today Malik Yakini, who is the founder of the co-op, as well as Dr. Akua Woolbright, who is the board chair. I'm going to be turning over to them in just a second. Keep just a couple things in mind. One, we are recording, and this recording will be shared on YouTube, so it will be up for posterity. Just keep that in mind. And because we do have a decent number of people in the room, we're going to ask the questions and comments go to the chat. The presenter said they would prefer those went to the chat, and that I kind of monitored that and let them know when there are questions so they could work them in when it fit for them. And then of course, if we have time at the end, there'll be a more open Q&A. And with that, I'm going to again thank Dr. Akua and Malik and turn it over to them.
Okay, thank you so much, Jacqueline, and peace and blessings. Greetings to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with my sister Akua, Dr. Akua Woolbright, who, as Jacqueline said, is the board president of the Detroit People's Food Co-op. I would like to make a correction. I'm not the founder of the Detroit People's Food Co-op. It was initiated by the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, the organization that I lead. So it was co-founded by a number of people. But we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to start with me doing a PowerPoint presentation that will hopefully explain the relationship between the three entities that are involved in this project that we're involved in. And much like some of my past relationships, it's complicated. And so this might be a way for you to visually understand what it is that we're dealing with. So give me just a second to pull up my screen. And I'm going to go through this PowerPoint. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, you all. So I want to explain the relationship between the Detroit People's Food Co-op, the Detroit Food Commons, and the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. So first of all, the co-op is a 17,000 square foot retail space that is not yet open. We are building a new building this will be located in. The product line will be 80% natural and organic, so-called, and 20% clean. Conventional will be a full service grocery store. We expect it to create 47 new jobs, and we'll have vendor booths on the outside of the building during the months the weather is not inclement. We currently, and I'm sorry, I meant to update this. We currently have 1,150 members, and our membership is continuing to grow. We have a board of directors. 6 of the board members are elected by the membership, and the other 3 are appointed by the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. So DBCFSN is a 501c3. We were started in 2006. One of our initial goals when we started was to start a food co-op. And I won't go into great detail, except just to say that we don't think capitalism is a good system for human beings and for the planet, but particularly for Black people and other people who are systemically kind of held out of the mainstream economy. So during the initial years, DBCFSN provided use of our staff to support the project moving forward, and we continue to provide some office space and support to the Detroit People's Food Co-op. So as I mentioned, 6 of the 9 members of the board are elected by the co-op member owners, and the other 3, as provided by Michigan co-op law, are appointed by Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, the 501c3 nonprofit that initiated the co-op. We started, DBCFSN started a buying club in 2009 as a precursor to this co-op, and we operated that from 2009 to 2017. That's a long story. that I'll get into maybe some other time if people want the grimy details of that. In 2010, we did a feasibility study that included about 300 people, 12 focus groups that suggested there was enough demand to move forward with the co-op. So we started talking to other co-ops in the state, and I can say they were all very helpful. Some have actually given money, some have given money and advice, but that was very helpful in us shaping our vision of what this co-op would be. In particular, the Kalamazoo People's Food Co-op had many of the elements that we thought would be important, not just in the co-op itself, but in the building the Detroit Food Commons that is housing the co-op. We also visited some co-ops out of the state, including Green Star Market in Ithaca and the infamous Park Slope Co-op in Brooklyn, New York. In 2013, we started an advisory committee because we had not yet incorporated the co-op and we didn't have a board of directors. So this advisory committee was in a sense the de facto board. We also hired a project manager at that time. Now, the biggest mistake that we made early on is that we focused way too much energy on the building and the real estate and the development side of this project. And while we made a lot of progress in that, it's by attending the up and coming conferences really that we learned we had done it backwards, that we probably should have put more emphasis on the organizing the people and building our base first. But we'll get to that. We learned a lesson and we've kind of switched courses. But I just want to be honest and say that we made some mistakes in the early years by putting way too much emphasis on the land and the building. So identifying the land was a huge process. I won't go into details. We became incorporated in 2014. We did significant community engagement, more than 36 sessions, primarily in the neighborhood. We're locating the co-op over about a 4-year period. So that's the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. The building itself that we're building is called the Detroit Food Commons. This is the architect's rendering of the building, a 2-story building. The first floor will be occupied by the Detroit People's Food Co-op. The entire building is 34,000 square feet. Our organization, the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, along with our development partner, Develop Detroit, are building this new construction and will jointly own the building. The Detroit People's Food Co-op will lease the entire first floor of the building. This is just a kind of an overhead photograph of the area. And you can see right now it's pretty desolate. We're in a neighborhood that is predominantly low and moderate income and really has a need for a grocery store. We've tried to be very thoughtful in the building of this building and picking Black contractors whenever possible. This is our architectural team. The woman on the far left is Julie McBride, who was formerly our project manager and unfortunately passed about a year ago. Also, the same with the general contractor. We tried to be very thoughtful about that. Larry Brinker is our general contractor. The city has required there's some housing that's done in conjunction with it. I won't go into that. We're not doing the housing, our development partner is. We had a market research study done that they indicated that the store itself could make conservatively about $110,000 per week. We contracted with 7 Roots, and I understand somebody's on the call now from 7 Roots for the store layout, and we're still working with 7 Roots to refine some of those designs. Bottom line, construction was held up because of lack of capital, and we've been raising this money for a long time. In the last 6 or 8 months, we've met with several Detroit foundations, and they have collectively pledged more than $4.5 million, most of which is now in the bank. And so construction is expected to begin between April and July of this year. I want to introduce to you the mighty board president of the Detroit People's Food Co-op, Dr. Akua Woolbright.
Well, thank you, Malik. I always enjoy, hearing the history because I'm newer to the process and I learn something new each and every time. And beyond the learning, it's inspiring to me to see that so much thought and effort has gone into bringing the Detroit People's Food Commons and the Detroit People's Food Co-op to the city. I am the board president and the membership and outreach committee co-chair. I came on board with the co-op, I believe, late 2017 or early 2018. and just wanted to support Malik in building on the work that had already been done, especially around some of those community engagement sessions, learnings from what the community wanted and how we can best serve. One of the first things that we focused on when I came on board was to do a fall celebration. This was an opportunity for us to bring our member owners in. That happened in September 2018 for them to get some energy, because as you see from the history, it's been a long time coming. So that fall celebration had an outdoor element and an indoor element. There were cooking demonstrations. There was a table with sample products with nutrition facts, so people can start to get an idea of what they may be able to expect. We had food, live music, desserts, and it was also a time for us to handle some business and to update our bylaws. So that was a very important meeting for us. The other thing that happened in the fall of 2018 is that we had a 2-day strategy session with what was then known as CDS Consulting. Bill Gester, may he rest in peace, spent 2 days with us and really worked us through understanding where we were in the phase of co-op development. And we got some of those learnings there also about focusing more on developing our membership, doing more outreach and recruitment. And we needed to have an annual meeting in our first elections. So there was a lot that was laid out for us in those 2 days. And I'm very proud to say that I think our member owners really took that information and those recommendations and moved forward on them pretty quickly, pretty aggressively. So I was really happy to see that. So that 2-day planning session happened September 2018. By March of 2019, we had our first annual meeting and our first elections. So now we have a fully seated board. As Malik mentioned, 6 members elected, 3 appointed from DBCFSN. The board immediately went through a number of orientations and trainings, trying to get them up to speed and oriented to the work that we have been doing. So just much like Malik just shared with you guys, they went through that same learning, but only it was 2 hours long or 3 hours long, so they could really be brought up to speed. And we did the same type of training with our member owners, because we wanted to have volunteer events and opportunities, and we wanted member owners to really be looped into the history and to understand the high level talking points. So Malik facilitated a lot of those trainings with the board and with member owners, and to support him in those trainings, we developed some talking points, a script, and some frequently asked questions. Our focus at that time really was on membership outreach and recruitment, because when I came on in 2018, and this was still true at the beginning of 2019, we had about 244 member owners. And the conventional wisdom is that co-ops are most successful when they have a strong base. And so through the recommendations with CDS Consulting, we learned that we need to get our numbers up to at least 1,000 before the store opened. So we worked really hard doing community outreach events. We were at festivals, street fairs, block parties. We were doing coffee with the co-op. And so we would go to a coffee shop, put a little sign up. A member owner would go with a laptop and talk about the co-op and take memberships. We had partnerships with area institutions and businesses like the Detroit Public Library, a local independent movie theater would just keep our postcards there and distribute them to their patrons and guests. So we worked really hard to raise awareness about the co-op coming to Detroit's North End. And by the end of 2019, we had gone from 244 member owners to 455 member owners. So that was a great push for us in just a 1-year period, or even less than a year. So I was really excited to see that happen. In 2020, we were hoping to continue that effort and keep that momentum. And then COVID happened. And so, as we all are familiar with, you have to pivot, you have to redirect. So we suspended, of course, all in-person live events. So our membership and outreach activities were really hit. One thing that I will say, I want to go back just a bit. The other thing that we did that supported our membership and outreach was having a website. So getting that website up in 2019 was helpful because people could then, register online. They could go to the website and feel like we were official. They could learn about us. They could see our pictures. They can connect with us. The other thing that really supported outreach was developing an office, regular office hours. We have a person who does regular office hours every Monday and Wednesday, Peggy Harp, and I think she's on the call today. She really worked really hard to come up with systems and processes for handling the paperwork and processing people's payments. All of those things gives you a different level of credibility and professionalism that I think really helped us a lot. And I'm really very proud of our office processes and our membership documentation and database and how that's handled, so that member owners feel like we're caring for them, we're caring for their $200 contribution and our payment for their membership. And so all of that, I think, helped to solidify us a little bit more. Then COVID happened. And what we decided to do was to focus on our other committee. So we have Membership and Outreach Committee. We also have a Finance Committee. So in 2020, the Finance Committee kind of took center stage. And we spent a lot of time working on our policies and our procedures, making sure those are really tight and that there's clear accounting. Another way to just increase your professionalism and to take care of your member owners, so you can have clear transparency and be very responsive to questions about the money and how it's being handled. We have a treasurer who's really worked very diligently with our accountant to make sure the numbers are accurate and clearly communicated. So we didn't know what would happen with our membership and outreach numbers in 2020 because we really couldn't have a lot of outreach events. The Membership and Outreach Committee instead started to focus on more internal events. Just trying to stay in touch with our member owners, letting them know that we're still there and we're still here for you. We had a few, maybe I think 2 Zoom parties. We had a couple of Zoom learning sessions where we had guest speakers come in. Someone did a gardening workshop. And then we had a few drive-by events. So people could drive by the site. Here's your future home. We could burn sage and incense on it and put some energy and intention into that space. Someone's shouting and celebrating that. Yes, for sage and incense. I love it. Just putting the energy and claiming that space, manifesting it, right? And those drive-by events were really successful. We also had a couple of cleanup days, just go to the land with some bags and pick up the trash, pick up the bottles, and just start pouring that love and that presence there and letting the community see our presence in that space. Of course, in 2020, we had the graphic murder of George Floyd. And we had people still trying to figure out how to deal with the pandemic. And those events really caused our numbers to spike. People were looking for ways to be behind something and to push back against the system and to support Black-led organizations and have a voice in how they want the world to be. And a lot of people saw the Detroit People's Food Co-op as an avenue, the vehicle for that empowerment and that resistance. And so our numbers went from 455 to 1,150 to date. So that was quick. I mean, just like overnight. And that just goes to show you that although the work we do is a marathon and it requires some planning and some strategy, there's also so much room for the unexpected to happen. And because our website was in place and because our office manager had put those systems in place, it positions us to be able to accept that influx of membership. So I'm really excited to see where we are now. We're in the top of 2021, and our third committee is now taking more attention. So Membership and Outreach Committee will continue to do its work. We're gonna have our annual meeting elections next month. Our Finance Committee will continue to do its work, but now our third committee, the Operations Committee, is really poised to bring this store to Detroit and open our doors. And so we're working on things like store culture. customer service, product mix, product standards, online ordering, curbside pickup, security, and hiring a general manager. And so that committee is newly, I would not say newly formed, but re-energized at this time to really take the lead in opening a grocery store. And so that's one of the things I've enjoyed. You know, I don't like doing the same. That's why I change jobs every few years. So I like that our different committees are taking focal points at different points in time as we go through different phases. It brings a lot of interest to the work and allows us to respond to all of the different aspects that are required for us to be a successful co-op. So I will stop there and just say thank you guys for having us on this call. And we will be very interested to know if there's any questions or discussion points from any of you.
All right, folks, so you can either use the raise hand function if you're comfortable with that. Otherwise, go ahead and you can just put even say like you got a question, just say I got a question in the chat if you want, whichever way you're most comfortable. So, and if you guys don't jump in, I got a million. So you better get
I see a question in the chat.
There you go.
I think Michelle just asked me, how will the operations committee work? Like what are our goals, and say more about that. Malik can support me with this. As I said, we're newly reconvening at this time, but we have 2 co-chairs, and we spent last night really talking about our top priorities, and some of the priorities are the ones I just shared. You know, hiring a general manager. You know, what's our quality standards or our product standards? Like, do we sell high fructose corn syrup? Do we sell additives and preservatives? So really, we know intuitively what we think, but putting that on paper and having a clear plan for that, so that's clearly communicated. Some of this will come out of us developing a mission statement. So we really know, not for the Detroit People's Co-op as a whole, but for the retail space, what is the mission statement, the purpose, the culture? So we just laid out those priorities, you know, online ordering. What about security? What music will be played in the store? What art do you see? How does it feel when you walk in? What's that experience like, right? And one thing I've been really keen on is I really want this co-op to be a place that's unique. You know, my professional job, I'll just disclose, I work for Whole Foods Market, and I know how, you know, competitive a grocery retail space can be, right? You know, Whole Foods Market came to Detroit and we were quite successful. We try to replicate that same model on the south side of Chicago. That store struggles, right? So I think we have to be more intentional about having something in the aisles that's different, having something in prepared foods that you can only get it at the co-op. The music has to speak to the people and be inclusive enough that everyone can feel welcome. You know, I talked about having, you know, maybe member owners serve as ambassadors at the front door, you know, high energy, greeting people, walking people down the aisle, showing people different products, starting conversation, creating that community. Malik talks about us, it feeling like a marketplace. Well, marketplace that I'm familiar when I go to like West Africa, it's loud, it's noisy, there's energy, it's almost tangible, right? So how do we create that in the store? Maybe we use member owners as volunteers to do that, because the employees be so focused on just the day-to-day operations. And so those are the kinds of things we're thinking about, and we'll have to start dividing this work up into like 2 or 3 persons teams. So a team could focus on perhaps security and find the security guards and screen them and go through that process, while someone else is working with 7 Roots on the deli and prepared foods menu and really drilling that down, while someone else is working on, you know, mission statement and product standards. So we'll have to divide the work up, but the idea is that we create a space that's clearly defined, that it has its culture, it has its identity, and people seek it out as their third space.
We've got another question there for you all. You mentioned the area being an area that where many folks are low income. What's your strategy to make the food affordable with 80% organic and local?
So maybe I'll take a stab at that and say that, you know, we've grappled with that question. And in a sense, I think that question gets to the root of the fundamental contradiction facing the food movement. because yes, we do want to make food affordable and accessible to people in the neighborhood. And we want to make sure that people who work in the food system are paid a fair wage. And frankly, I'm not sure that both of those conditions can be met within the context of the current capitalist controlled food system that we have. So that's an ongoing challenge. We actually wanted to have more than 20% clean conventional food in the store, but after meeting with Bill Geston and really looking at the margins for natural and organic and the margins for clean conventional, we were kind of forced to increase the percentage of natural and organic just to make the store cash flow positively. So to be honest, I'm not sure we have an answer to your question, and I'm not sure there is an answer to the question, but others have strategies that have worked well and still allow them, again, to pay the employees well, then we would certainly be interested in hearing those.
And I'll jump in. This is not an answer to your question, but it may help with how people come to see what we're doing. I am excited about the Commons having that second floor with some classrooms, so we can have some education around food and the food system, so people understand, if you're paying a fair wage and you're operating with fair trade and you're bringing in quality products, that there is a different price point. And maybe so having nutrition and food related classes. And also we can do some of that on the floor. I love doing like walk-in conversations, walk-in education classes on the floor of a grocery store. So people start to understand that the food that we're offering may be an investment to their health, an investment to creating a more sustainable environment. And maybe that will help people see it different or accept it in a different way. And we will have scholarships. So there's $100 scholarship that's available for member owners who or community members who meet a certain criteria to receive half off of their membership. We don't have a lot of those, but it's at least something to start helping people be able to afford to shop in our co-op.
If I could add just a little more to that. So Detroit Black Community Food Security Network also runs a farm. And so we're faced with the same question at the farm. How do we function in an environment where it costs us a certain amount to raise healthy, nutrient-dense, sustainable produce, but then there's other stores in the general vicinity that are selling food raised by the factory farm system that's paying workers pennies, not literally, but figuratively pennies. And then we're in a competitive situation. I'm not sure that there's really a way to compete with that. So what I would add to this answer is the movement to build a fair and just food system has to be coupled with the movement to eliminate poverty. The solution to this is not cheap food, right? The solution to it is to make sure everyone has a livable wage so they can pay the fair cost of food. And I'll add one more thing and say my friend Raj Patel has a book out called The Cost of Nothing. And in it, he talks about all the externalized costs. So even though we might think we're paying a lot for food, we're really not paying the cost of food. A lot of those costs are being externalized, and a lot of it has to do with the cost, the long-term cost to the environment, as well as the exploitation of workers. So again, to summarize, the answer is not cheap food. The answer is to couple our struggle for food justice with the struggle to eliminate poverty so that people have a fair wage.
Wonderful. I could not agree more. A couple other questions. I feel like you guys got to them in your answers, but I will just double check that these people feel clear that they got answers. I think, Dr. Akua, you kind of alluded to offering a lower cost membership for those with lower income or some kind of discount or something. Could you speak a little more to that?
Yeah, so this is not a widespread discount. We have enough to give maybe 60 scholarships to member owners who meet a certain criteria. For instance, they live within a certain mile radius of the co-op. They have, are economically disadvantaged in some way, and they have an interest. They have an interest in shopping at a co-op because we want to give the scholarships to our future customers. So people who understand cooperative principles, or they want fresh, healthy foods, whatever their inroad is to us. We want to identify some of that, and we're working with local organizations. So we're not making those decisions. We're partnering with local organizations to identify community members that they think would be good candidates for the scholarship. And so, like I mentioned before, it's not a widespread sweeping program, but it's something to start answering some of those questions. And if anyone wants to donate to Detroit People's Food Co-op and just earmark it scholarships, we would be happy to offer more scholarships to community residents in the future.
Bonnie, did I see your hand up? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we, over last summer, experienced a lot of growth too because of all the protests. And we found that all these people were buying memberships who didn't live in our area. And so we have since put a designation on the website where you can join for people to donate a membership. And we're in the process of finding a way to distribute them locally. So working with some other organizations as well.
Michelle.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. This is so wonderful. I just feel your energy. I'm in Chicago and South Evanston, and we are embarking on a project to set up focus groups in our communities. Would you be willing to say a little bit about how you set that up? It sounds like one thing is you certainly went into community organizations, for example, and worked with them to set it up. But could you say more about the kinds of questions you asked, processes you used? Anything you could offer would be really helpful to us. Thank you.
Sure. So at the time, we had a member working in our organization, Dr. Ebony Roberts, who had a background in really conducting market research. And so that was fortunate. She was one of the founders of our organization. And so she led that process. We partnered with 12 community organizations, and each of those community organizations hosted a focus group. And so they called people from their clientele to the focus group, and then the questions were asked. I didn't participate in the focus groups, and I don't remember what the questions were, but I put my email address in the chat box. If you want to email me, I can go back through the records and actually send you the results of the focus groups.
That's great. Actually, if you find that, I'll send you an email and say, if you find it, you can send it to me. I can share it with everybody. Because I think I know I'm about to hear a lot of people asking for it. Other questions, comments? I'm going to jump in for a second and just say, I heard you talk a lot, Dr. Akua, about systems and having these systems built and why they were important, how they created professionalism, trust in the community, and readiness. And first off, Bill Gessner is somewhere smiling down upon you right now, because it's one of the 4 pillars or the 4 cornerstones of developing a food co-op that everyone's like, in systems. Can you just speak a little bit more to which of those systems really created bang for the buck, and how you found kind of the capacity to do that, or why you prioritized it?
I think that the thing for me that has been, I want to say most critical when it comes to systems, but that has been critical, has been having, Peggy Hart being willing to do office hours every week. And so that is just, again, something you can't really predict. It's something you can call out. You can call out to your member owners and make that request and try to call someone in. But the fact that she had a willingness and an interest to do that, I think was very helpful. So I'll give you a little bit about how that came to be. As you know, DBCFSN is our parent organization, and they have office spaces, and they were gracious enough to give us a cubicle, a nice space within their offices that we could call our own. And so just spending time, envisioning what that space could be, just having fun going shopping for office supplies, and what you want to put on the wall. Just those things start to make you feel like you have a job and we have a space, and this is what we're going to do to move things forward. We got a virtual phone line so people can contact us. I think having the email address, because before this, keep in mind, Malik mentioned that DBCFSN was taking those calls and kind of holding the membership space for us. They were handling our memberships. So it wasn't, you didn't have one person who was dedicated strictly on the co-op. So when we kind of came in, we made sure we had a separate phone line, that we had a separate email address, that we had, our own website, and having someone in the office, twice a week to answer phone calls, return phone calls, to check the emails, make sure people getting timely communications, making sure people getting their certificates of membership, making sure people getting their bylaws. And they can, when you're a new member owner, you spent $200, even if you're on a payment plan, when you get your paperwork, you feel like, oh, this is real. Like they're not just taking my money. Cause I saw somebody at a festival with a table ask me for $200, but I have real proof with my receipt and my paperwork, my bylaws showing that I own this share in this business. And so to have that packet that we know goes out, to have those receipts and the tracking of receipts, tracking payments, knowing who's paid in full, knowing who's on a payment plan, who is behind in their payments, being able to follow up with communications. All of that just makes things run much more smoothly, and it helps member owners to feel that confidence. Part of that too, was making sure, like I mentioned before, that we have the training for member owners, so that when they're going out to communicate about the co-op, using the same language, the same talking points, they're being trained on how to take money, how to record money, how to use Square. Not that this stuff always works perfectly and seamlessly. That's never my goal. Like I understand, that life is what it is, and there's gonna be these learning curves, but to just start having some systems in place to track those things. And then once the system's in place, you can then evaluate and assess where you need to grow, where you need to improve, what needs to get better, but to at least know where you're starting, where you're trying to go is part of it. So just kind of having that map. Did that answer your question enough?
That was wonderful. Yeah.
Okay.
You can tell from the comments too. People threw in a bunch more comments and questions and thank yous. And
oh, good. Oh, good.
There was the question about whether you guys have continued office hours during COVID. Peggy said that virtual ones, at this point, but that the concept remains, people can get a hold of you.
Yes, absolutely. And in addition to that, other ways that people can communicate with us is we do have our monthly membership meetings. We're having our monthly committee meetings, all virtual.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a monthly newsletter that goes out that kind of gives membership updates, where the committees are meeting. We do a co-op corner, which this is just an article about maybe Black ran led co-ops or food co-ops in Michigan, or whatever the topic is for that month. Mm-hmm. We have a text app system, a texting system that we also purchase, so that we can text out reminders, like when the upcoming elections are coming or the annual meeting is coming. So just, and sometimes we do blast emails. So just different ways to be in communication with people so they feel like we're still here, and the work is moving forward.
I just want to point out what Dr. Akua said, the layered communication and the text piece. I have not seen many startups do that, but some established co-ops use it to great effect. So I'm really excited to hear about that innovation and say, think about that. I don't know if you have a second to talk. Has that been pretty effective? Are owners really signing up for that?
Oh my God, so we text them. So because Peggy Harp has really tracked this database so tightly, and she has everyone, their names, their contact, everything we need for them, we just text them. And so for instance, when we did our drive-by events, we would text them the morning of to say, hey, remember, we're out here and people say, oh my God, thank you for that. I had totally forgotten. I was running errands. I was shopping for groceries. I got my text. I drove on by. So again, when we have our elections next month, it'd be a perfect way to, send out maybe even an election buddy link via text, or reminders to complete your elections via text. It's just a way, because people are living in real time now and moving so quickly, to kind of catch people where they are. And then maybe that'll be a reminder, oh, I did see that email. Oh yeah, I did see that newsletter. Oh yeah, I heard that at the meeting. Now the text comes, okay, let me take action. So I feel like it's been effective for us.
Brilliant. People asked if you would share the name of the text app.
The name of the text app?
Uh-huh.
I don't remember. Peggy, do you remember the name of it? We can send it to you, Jacqueline.
That's cool. Robin says, okay. Okay, Peggy's looking at both the text app piece and the name of the database. People are asking what database they're using, what text app. I think Peggy's on it.
She's on it. See, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so that you guys need a Peggy. That's the thing. You need a Peggy. And something else that Peggy is working on, and not just Peggy, but she and some other member owners, they have started an anti-racism group. So they can just start having those conversations about, just white people and Black-led spaces.
Yeah.
So we could all just try to get along, get this work done.
I wish we could get Peggy to come on for a minute, show her beautiful face.
We keep talking about her.
Say a word
No,
about
where's Peggy?
stuff.
She's like, uh-oh. You put me on the spot, Malik, always.
There's a question, are all our members Black? So there's Peggy, and I think that answers your question.
I didn't see
Yeah,
that.
no.
I'm not Black?
I don't know. Well, yeah, if you go far enough back.
In spirit, my sister, in spirit.
There was a question from Katie. Could you talk a little more about your relationships with other community organizations in Detroit, how you built those and what those have meant?
Okay, maybe I'll start. So again, I want to lay out these three parts: Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, Detroit Food Commons, and Detroit People's Food Co-op, so you can see how these things interact. So Detroit Black Community Food Security Network has been in existence since 2006. And even prior to that, myself and the other founding members have been activists for decades in Detroit. So we already had these rich relationships with people that we were able to leverage for this particular project. It's not like we just dropped into the community and said, well, we're starting a project, and introduced ourselves. We already knew folks, and we had worked with people, and people trusted us because of decades of work in the community. And so we have relationships with many, many, many groups. So some of the relationships are the 12 groups I talked about for the focus groups, for example. We have relationships. I talked about, we did about 36 different community engagement sessions. Those were done in a similar way, where we would partner with a community organization, because most of us don't live in that particular neighborhood, right? So we're trying to be thoughtful about people who are living in that neighborhood, playing a role in really galvanizing support within the neighborhood. So we partner with community organizations for those 36 community engagement sessions. For example, if it was with the church, then they would try to get their congregation to come out to the community engagement session. If it was a block club, they would get their members to come out. And so we've always done that kind of building with other groups. There's also a number of groups that have been supportive by letting us come out to their events, and Akua mentioned some of those things. There's been coffee shops and things that have been supported by letting us set up. So I would say we have broad relationships, and that generally in the Detroit community, this is a project that's viewed favorably across all kinds of boundaries that normally separate us.
So did that get to what you wanted, or do you have a, yeah, go ahead. I thought you might have a follow.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And part of my question, I guess, is also around the people who live in the neighborhood where your store is going to be located. Do you have a sense of, like, maybe percentage is not the right way to think of that, but like, is there a lot of membership or ownership of the co-op from that, coming from that community, or do you find that it's largely from outside of the community?
I personally have never analyzed the data, and since Peggy's on the call, I don't know if she has or if Akua has anything to add to this. I would guess, this is just a guess because I've never looked at it through that lens, that most of the people don't live in that immediate community, in that neighborhood.
I think that's an accurate guess. I think that's accurate. And so one thing that we're focused on now, DBCFSN has, I don't know what to call her. Her title is so long, but they have I'll call her a community liaison who the co-op gets to share. And I've been meeting with her in the last couple of weeks. And that's really an area we want to focus on next. Malik mentioned all of the different types of organizations, who've known D-Town Farm and DBCFSN for many, many years. And Malik's name, people know him and the people who are around him for so many, many, many years. But, one area we want to go to next is really targeting, more than we have already, like just doing another dive, the 40th dive into talking to the churches and faith-based organizations in that community so they can get the word out. We did have a movie night in the neighborhood, and we worked with a couple of local organizations to bring people out. I think we had over 60 people who attended that, and they got to get food and watch a movie about co-ops and just kind of learn about what we're trying to do. But the other thing we really want to focus on is using this contact list we've made. We have a contact list of organizations in that neighborhood, and we are going to plan a phone bank where we call and reach out to them. We also are going to do some canvassing where we take materials and we actually go door to door just to be up close with people and just introduce ourselves. And we are hoping to pair that all on the phone bank and the canvassing with when the sign goes on the land. So there will be a sign pretty soon coming that says, Detroit People's Food Co-op, or the Commons coming soon. And then people will wonder, well, what's that in my neighborhood? That's on my block. No one said anything to me. So it's our job to go out through the phone bank and canvassing just to introduce ourselves.
If I can add one thing to Akua's answer. So in addition to being thoughtful about the neighborhood that we're locating in, there's really three kind of target audiences that we've identified. One is the residents of the neighborhood. And I've already said it's a predominantly low and moderate income neighborhood. It only has one grocery store in the neighborhood, which is like piss poor. But the second audience is a citywide audience. So one thing to understand about Detroit, Detroit really is a movement town. Detroit has this tremendous history of activism, both in the Black freedom movement, the civil rights movement, and also in the labor movement. And so there's still kind of the residuals of that movement element still in the city of Detroit. And so there's a number of people that are interested in justice and a more equitable economy and these things, who might not live in the neighborhood, but who support the principles that the co-op is built on. And so we intentionally located the co-op almost right in the center of the city, so it's accessible by major freeways, by major street level streets, so that our second audience will be a citywide audience. And then thirdly, as in many major cities, and Detroit is an overwhelmingly African-American city, about 80%, but there's a huge number of people who work in the suburb, who live in the suburbs, but work in Detroit. And most of those people are white, of course, but they drive down Woodward Avenue. So we purposely located the store on the east side of the street, because if you stand on the west side of the street at about 8 o'clock in the morning, you'll see like 10 gazillion white people driving down Woodward Avenue into downtown Detroit. If you stand on the east side of the street about 4 o'clock, you'll see the same 10 zillion white people leaving the city. So as they're leaving the city, we want to make it easy for them to make a right turn into our parking lot and purchase something to take back with them. And so that's our third audience. And so we're kind of thoughtfully cultivating all of those audiences.
I love it.
I love that. That is so strategic.
I love it.
Okay. Thanks, Peggy. I see that over there. I wanted to shout out the way you guys used this site during 2020. I would say that, like, who here has not heard me on a peer call say, go look at what Detroit did with their site during 2020, because there wasn't even anything there yet. And they went out and they were there, they were handing out information, they were, and I want to point to this, because that use of this site, a lot of us wait till we can afford the big sign. And you guys were physically out there really claiming the space. And I wonder if you just talk a little bit more about, how that came together and what worked, and just kind of give peers some thoughts about it.
Akua, can we allow Peggy to introduce herself and just say a word or two?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, I'm Peggy. I've seen some of y'all before on these calls. Is there what else you want me to say, Malik? You want me to talk about the site?
Well, maybe you can start by addressing Jacqueline's last question. I just want to get you in the mix, and then whatever you don't say, I'm sure cool will fill in.
Okay, I was just like looking for that text name, but
I'll look for it.
so what was your question, Jacqueline? I'm sorry.
So just how the way you guys used the site. There's no building there yet, but you got out there physically. You know, holding up signs, letting people know about it. Was pretty innovative. We haven't seen startups do that before. They could afford the big sign, and they don't usually go out there physically until they can throw like a very organized party. I thought it was really effective, and I wonder if you could just talk about how that came together and what worked about it, or what advice you give to folks who might want to copy that.
Yeah, so one of the board members, Angela Lugo Thomas, I think came up with that, or several board members came up with that together.
No. It came from you, Peggy, because you.
I always do this. I'm always like, oh yeah, thanks for the reminder.
No.
It actually came from the conference.
Yes.
It came from the conference. And I forget which co-op it was, but they were talking about they had kind of had an introduction to the space, like the building where they like mapped out with tape, like, oh, this is where the deli will be and that will be. And so we were playing around with something like that outside because we didn't have a building. But that just kind of got like too big and like too much, you know, like too much money, too much energy. We didn't really have the capacity for that. And so this kind of evolved out of that, where it was just a way to connect. And I think Angela did kind of come up with that. You know, just a way to connect. We're all so hungry to connect. And I know, it felt really bad to be separated from everybody. And so to do it, people are hungry to be out there. So to do it in a safe way where people could drive up and we could meet them at the cars. We made some different flyers and information and gave out postcards, had a tent and balloons and did a cleanup. Akua was out there cleaning up and yeah, it was a beautiful thing. I think people really enjoyed it.
I can't remember how many people we said, but I think we gave out like over 100 pieces of literature.
It wasn't even a nice day, right?
It was raining. It was raining. I was real wet, but the energy was so high. The energy was high.
Hey, Peggy,
and then
go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and then the cleanup days, one of our owner members, Paul, from that original site, drive-by site, he was like, we need to just really take care of this. And so he and I and a couple other people, go and clean up. And then it's just an opportunity when people are walking by to say hi and just chit chat. And we have our postcards with us. And it feels really good to be in that space.
And to get real quick, to give you an example how each could be different, the cleanup day could just be them out there, cleaning up. But when we did the drive-by, we had our banner up and a table and African cloth out. So it could be as much or as little as you want it to be.
Peggy, I'm wondering, in 1 minute, since we have some white people on the call, if you could say a bit about why you have provided leadership with some of the other white people in the co-op, thinking about race and how they move within that construct.
Wow. So it was kind of a response to something a lot of white people do, including myself, is to center our own feelings around something. So we had someone come to a meeting and kind of take the meeting up about, is this just for Black people? And so we really hardly got to our agenda, and myself and a few other folks that were there didn't really respond very well. And so we decided that if that's, that could be an ongoing problem and that it's our responsibility as white people to help the other white people not do that. So we just kind of started getting together and talking about ways that we could do that, initially just in meetings, like how we would react again when that kind of thing happens. And so it's really just been like 4 of us that have been meeting and reading books and having discussions. And we've just now kind of opened it up to the larger group and have kind of a plan for study and action, as we had a name that was a discussion group. Malik, lovingly pointed out that a discussion group is often then, when you name your group a discussion group, all you're going to do is discuss. So, we're really, examining ways that, we can make reparations and that we can heal things. So. That's it.
Thank you so much, Peggy.
Yes, and I love that you guys did, like the four of you did your own internal work first. You kind of got oriented, and so you guys can be strong facilitators before you invited more people in.
What Peggy didn't tell you is the meeting where the white woman took up a lot of space. At the end of the meeting, Peggy said to me, "I want to smack her." I was like, "Peggy, calm down. She needs education and loving, not smacking." Well, at least not this time. Maybe sometime. Some folks.
I wouldn't really smack her. I just, I get a little excited. I'm an Aries.
All right, well, we are just 1 minute from the top of the hour, and I do want to end on time and respect Malik and Dr. Akua's time. Was there any last comment or question before we wrap up today?
I do want to
All right.
say that I appreciate that whiteness came up here, and I appreciate that. It's a part of what many people need to think about, have had to think about, and putting it on the table as many times as we can is important. So thank you.
All right, I think guys, with that, I just think let's give our thanks to Dr. Akua and Malik. Really appreciate you guys taking the time with everything you have on your plates to be here today. This was recorded and it will be up on YouTube next week. I'll send out an email when that happens so you can access it and share it with others. I'm sure you're going to want to share it. This was a great session. Thank you so much, Dr. Akua and Malik, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a good week. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.